You're listening to the Bots and Bosses podcast, the only show where robots and humans attempt to work side by side. Presented by John Binks, technologist, author, and your AI Ringling tour guide. So, buckle up and let's deep dive.
Welcome to the Bots and Bosses podcast, presented by John Binks. This is episode 40 and originally aired on May 5th, 2026.
40 shows. Wow.
I know. I have to just pause for a second because honestly, reaching show 40 is a massive milestone for us.
It really is.
And I am genuinely thrilled we're crossing it together. You know, when we started this journey, the goal was always to kind of cut through the noise and figure out the actual future of work.
Exactly. Getting past the hype.
Right. And your curiosity, your constant support, and, well, the incredible questions you all send in, that's what drives this entire operation. So to every single one of you listening right now, thank you.
Yes. Huge thank you.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have a remarkably dense and I think critical topic to tear into today.
We really do. This one is huge.
Yeah, so for today's deep dive, we are exploring this incredibly insightful piece of source material. It's titled From AI Tools to AI Teammates, Rewriting Management Reality.
Such a great title.
It is. And the core mission here is to map out this fundamental shift that is just tearing through the corporate world at this very moment.
Yeah. And we aren't talking about, 5 years down the road.
No, not future projections. We're talking about how organizations are actively redesigning the concept of work right now as AI transitions from a simple reactive productivity tool into an actual operational teammate.
Which is a premise that basically demands we completely dismantle our traditional understanding of what management even means.
Right. To really grasp the gravity of this, we need to look at the historical context the author lays out. Because for years, AI was just this, neat little software upgrade living quietly on the side of your workflow.
Yeah, on the periphery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about it like a high-end power tool in your garage. Let's say a laser-guided drill.
Our drill.
You know exactly what the relationship is, right?
Yeah.
That drill sits in the toolbox. It does absolutely nothing until you physically walk over, pick it up, point it at a piece of wood, and pull the trigger.
It's powerful, sure, but fundamentally passive.
Exactly. It was essentially a spell checker on steroids.
Yeah.
Just waiting for human input to smooth out the rough edges.
What's fascinating here is that old model is fundamentally breaking down. The most critical change happening right now isn't really about AI's raw computing power.
Right. Or the parameter size of the language model.
Exactly. The revolution is about where the AI shows up in the workflow. The source actually defines this as a transition from a model of capability to a model of presence.
Okay, capability versus presence. That sounds great on a white paper, but let's break down the mechanics of that transition. How does that actually manifest for, the listener sitting at their desk on a Tuesday morning?
Well, if we stick to your drill analogy, capability is simply a measure of how fast the drill spins, right? Or how long the lithium battery lasts.
Sure.
But presence means the drill is no longer waiting in the toolbox. It has pulled itself out, reviewed your architectural blueprints, noticed a structural flaw in the load-bearing calculations, and has already started assembling the cabinetry while you were sleeping.
Oh, wow.
While you were sleeping. Yes. AI is becoming embedded directly into the continuous flow of work. It proactively monitors incoming data streams, it analyzes market trends in real time, formulates recommendations.
And it actually executes multi-step tasks, right?
Exactly. Within predefined boundaries, all without a human explicitly prompting it to do so.
So it's the cognitive difference between a spell checker and a proactive co-author.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Because a spell checker is entirely reactive. It waits for you to mistype a word and then, boom, flashes a red line.
Right.
But a proactive co-author reads your initial rough draft, realizes the narrative pacing in Chapter 3 is dragging, and independently drafts a structural revision for you to approve while you're out getting a coffee.
Yes, exactly. You are no longer just using a tool. You are managing a very fast, occasionally unpredictable digital apprentice.
And the source material grounds this theory with some highly specific industry examples, doesn't it? To prove this is already operational.
It does. Take financial services, for example. We aren't talking about AI as an advanced calculator anymore.
Right.
Systems are now embedded into portfolio management where they actively conduct scenario modeling. So while a human advisor is asleep, the AI is running thousands of complex what-if market simulations based on overnight global news.
Wow, thousands of simulations.
Yeah. And it instantly formulates a revised risk assessment profile for the advisor to review the more they log in.
So that drastically changes the human's role. I mean, the human isn't building the analysis anymore. They are editing and approving the analysis.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And we see the exact same architecture in large enterprise environments, complex multi-stage workflows.
And global supply chain routing.
Exactly. Supply chain routing or massive data migration processes, they're being automated at scale. Even in highly rigid research settings, the source notes measurable, proven gains in output quality.
So when humans collaborate with these systems, rather than just commanding them, the productivity curve just goes vertical.
It goes completely vertical.
Which means the key takeaway for you, the listener, is this. AI is no longer just helping you do the work. It is actually completing the work.
Yes, completing it.
And that subtle but massive shift in functionality is what triggers a psychological change. Employees aren't just logging into an application anymore. They're collaborating with the system they actively rely on to hit their quarterly targets.
And that psychological shift completely fractures the corporate jargon we've been using for the last few years.
Oh, you mean like...
Particularly the phrase the hybrid workforce.
I am so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because hybrid workforce has almost exclusively been this HR battleground over who gets to work remotely on Tuesdays and who has to endure the brutal commute into the physical office.
Right, the return to office fights.
Exactly. But the text argues the definition is entirely obsolete now.
It is. The new definition of the hybrid workforce is about human and digital labor operating together within the exact same team structure.
Human and digital labor.
Yeah. It requires synthesizing two vastly different types of capabilities. Because AI brings sheer velocity, right? The ability to operate continuously 24/7 without fatigue.
No coffee breaks needed.
None. And the capacity to process data at a scale that is simply biologically impossible for a human brain.
But I'd argue that raw processing power has a hard ceiling because the AI doesn't actually comprehend why it's doing the work.
Right, no broader context.
Exactly, no broader situational awareness. It can process 500 pages of legal discovery in 3 seconds, sure, but it doesn't know that the opposing counsel has a specific negotiation style or that the client is currently anxious about bad PR.
That is exactly the limitation, and it perfectly illustrates the human half of the new hybrid equation. Humans bring context, nuanced judgment, creative problem solving, and above all, accountability.
Accountability.
Yeah. The challenge for modern leaders is not deciding whether to use human or digital labor. The leader's core job is architecting how these two distinct entities interlock.
Okay, think of it like being an executive chef.
Oh, I like this.
In the old model, you managed a kitchen full of human sous chefs. Now you're managing a few highly skilled human sous chefs alongside a fleet of advanced, automated prep machines. You have to design the operational flow. Who handles the delicate, highly creative pastry plating that requires an artistic eye? And who gets assigned the task of perfectly dicing 500 pounds of onions at maximum speed?
Exactly.
If you misassign those tasks, like if you ask the machine to invent a new recipe or ask the human to chop onions for 10 hours, the entire restaurant grinds to a halt.
The ability to make those architectural design choices is the defining characteristic that separates a modern effective manager from a legacy manager who is just going to be left behind.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into the really tricky part of managing this new dynamic, because there is a massive friction point coming up, I want to take a quick second to say, if you are enjoying our podcast, please click like and follow our show. And remember to tell your friends about our show.
We really do appreciate it. It allows us to keep exploring these massive shifts in how the world operates.
All right, let's dive into the delegation dilemma, because this is where I see the entire system threatening to go off the rails.
Oh, for sure.
Delegating to a human teammate is a known science. You assign a task, you set a deadline, and you review the result. But more importantly, there are deeply human levers you can pull to ensure compliance and quality.
Right. Humans have motivations.
Exactly. Humans have ambition. They want that year-end promotion. They have pride in their craft, or, frankly, they have a fear of losing their job.
Yes, fear works.
It does. If a human employee consistently underperforms, you put them on a performance improvement plan. You sit them down for a stern one-on-one. But how on earth do you delegate to a system that doesn't feel fear, pride, or ambition? I mean, you can't lecture a bot into caring about its work.
You really can't. And the source material explicitly validates that exact frustration. The very nature of managerial delegation is undergoing a forced evolution.
Forced evolution.
Yeah. As a manager today, you essentially have 3 distinct routing options for any incoming project. You can assign it directly to a human, you can assign it entirely to an autonomous AI agent, or you can assign it to a human who is explicitly tasked with overseeing an AI system's output.
And each of those distinct routing choices carries a totally different risk profile, right? Requiring entirely different methods of oversight.
Exactly. And the unique risk when delegating to an AI system is the illusion of perfection.
The illusion of perfection. That's a great phrase.
Because AI outputs are incredibly fast, and they usually look highly polished and articulate. But beneath that confident, formatted polish, the output can contain severe factual errors, massive gaps in logical reasoning, or it might be operating on incomplete or fundamentally flawed data.
It speaks with absolute, unwavering confidence, even when it is entirely demonstrably wrong.
Yes, the hallucinations.
Which brings us to a massive vulnerability the article calls the trust gap. Because right now, what we are seeing across the corporate landscape is a massive wave of grassroots adoption.
Grassroots meaning the employees are just doing it themselves.
Exactly. Employees are widely using AI tools on their own initiative. They want to clear out their overflowing inboxes. They want to be more efficient. They want to get home at 5 o'clock. But they are doing this entirely in the dark, without clear structural guidance from their leadership.
Which creates a remarkably dangerous environment. Let's look at the mechanics of that. Without a centralized architecture, you have a classic high-stakes case of shadow IT.
Let's make this concrete. You have Bob in accounting.
Good old Bob.
Right. Bob is overwhelmed with end-of-quarter reporting. So to save himself 3 hours of manual spreadsheet analysis, Bob takes highly confidential, unreleased Q3 financial data and feeds it into an unapproved public AI model he found on the internet.
Oh, no.
Right. He gets his summary, he goes to his kid's soccer game, and he thinks he's a genius. But he just exposed proprietary company data to a public server.
And that scenario is playing out thousands of times a day across the globe.
Right.
Without clear, explicit guidance from leadership, you get wild inconsistency. You get variable quality levels across a single department, where one employee is producing brilliant AI-assisted work, and another is submitting AI-generated hallucinations as fact. Managers are getting squeezed in the middle of this chaos.
They really are.
Because they're responsible for translating high-level corporate strategy into safe daily execution. If managers do not step in, provide a clear structure, and set rigid boundaries for how this digital teammate is utilized, the employees will simply invent their own rules.
Because nature abhors a vacuum.
Right.
If leadership doesn't fill that space with policy, convenience will fill it instead.
Exactly. And as the source strongly warns, without that structural oversight, speed quickly turns into catastrophic risk. If an AI system is operating on a flawed logic and a human isn't properly reviewing the output, you aren't just making a mistake.
You're generating mistakes at 1,000 times the normal human rate.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because beneath all this discussion of efficiency and risk management, there is a very real, palpable fear out there. I mean, I hear it from listeners constantly.
The job replacement fear.
Yes.
Yeah.
The thought process is, if the AI is no longer just a spell checker, if it is actually executing and completing the heavy lifting, if the bot writes the code, drafts the legal brief, and analyzes the portfolio, why am I here?
Right.
Why would a company pay me a full salary just to act as a rubber stamp on a machine's work? Aren't human workers becoming obsolete?
It is the most natural, instinctual question to ask when faced with this technology. But the reality presented in the text reveals a fascinating paradox.
A paradox.
Yeah. As AI takes over the mechanical execution of tasks, human value within the organization is actually increasing, not decreasing.
Yeah, I would push back hard on that.
Yeah.
Explain the actual mechanism there. Because logic dictates that if I am doing less of the actual building, my value to the company should drop proportionally. How does doing less make me more valuable?
It's because the nature of your contribution shifts higher up the value chain. Look at what AI actually is. It is a phenomenal engine for generating options, drafting initial content, and surfacing data insights at scale.
Right.
But as you astutely pointed out earlier with the lawyer analogy, AI has zero understanding of real-world context.
None at all.
It does not understand the delicate political dynamics of navigating a 10-year client relationship. It cannot read the emotional nuance in a room during a difficult team negotiation.
That's very true.
So, as the machine absorbs the mechanical drafting, Humans are forced to step up and take over the significantly higher value areas: complex business judgment, strategic decision-making, relationship building, and above all else, accountability.
Accountability.
Yeah.
That really is the anchor point of this whole shift, isn't it?
Mm.
Because an AI system cannot get fired.
Nope.
It cannot be held legally liable if a major compliance rule is broken. And it cannot stand up in a boardroom and defend a controversial strategic pivot to angry shareholders.
Exactly. An algorithm cannot carry the weight of responsibility for an outcome. The more an organization relies on AI to execute tasks at breakneck speed, the more desperately that organization requires humans to provide the strategic direction for that execution and to stand by the final results. You need someone to look at the AI's output and say, yes, I stake my professional reputation on this. This dynamic makes leadership, critical thinking, and human judgment more vital than it has ever been in the entire history of corporate management.
So if that is the new reality, what does this actually mean for the managers and leaders listening right now? The people who are realizing in real time that they are no longer just managing human beings, but are now responsible for governing this complex, hybrid, human-digital ecosystem.
Well, the source material is adamant that leaders must urgently develop what it calls AI fluency.
AI fluency.
Yes. This is no longer a niche technical skill. It is the new baseline requirement for modern leadership. You simply cannot opt out of this if you want to remain relevant.
Does AI fluency mean like every mid-level marketing manager suddenly needs to learn Python, take advanced coding masterclasses, and understand the complex mathematics of neural networks? Because if so, most of the workforce is in deep trouble.
No, not at all. The text clarifies that you do not need to be deeply technical to be AI fluent. AI fluency means you possess a solid conceptual understanding of how these systems operate.
Okay, conceptual.
Yeah, you know exactly where they add genuine velocity to a project, and crucially, you know where they introduce structural risk. It means you have developed the critical thinking skills to evaluate an AI's output, ask highly strategic questions of both the system and your team, and guide your people in utilizing the technology safely.
It sounds exactly like managing a team of specialized structural engineers.
How do you mean?
Well, if I am the project manager building a skyscraper, I don't need to know how to do the advanced calculus myself, but I absolutely need to know enough about the foundational physics to look at the bridge design the engineers hand me and ask, did we adequately account for wind shear at this altitude?
That is a perfect encapsulation, yes. And to help leaders actually execute this transition, the source lays out a clear, actionable methodology.
Okay, what's the first step?
The fundamental first move is that leaders must actively redesign their workflows, not just blindly deploy tools. You can't just buy 100 enterprise AI licenses, hand them out to your team, and say, go be productive.
Right. We talked about that with Bob in accounting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to map out the actual step-by-step processes of your department. You have to identify exactly which stages benefit from digital scale while deliberately carving out and preserving the specific stages that require human judgment and intervention.
So, practically speaking, if my team processes complex insurance claims, I map the workflow. Steps 1 through 3, data gathering and historical cross-referencing, go to the AI.
Perfect. Yes.
Step 4, determining if the claim feels fraudulent based on nuanced context, stays firmly with the human. Steps 5 through 8, drafting the approval paperwork, go back to the AI. And step 9, the final approval and client communication, is handled by the human.
Exactly. You are structurally designing the collaboration, and as you map that out, you must clearly define the AI's specific role within each team.
Give it a title.
Think of it like writing a formal job description for the software. Is the AI acting as a primary data researcher, a copy editor, a coding assistant? By defining its role, you give your human employees clear boundaries, reducing confusion over who is responsible for what.
But none of this works if the manager doesn't understand it themselves.
Which is why the source emphasizes that organizations must train their managers first before rolling it out to the broader employee base.
Managers dictate the culture of a team.
Yes. If a manager is intimidated by the AI or doesn't trust it or doesn't know how to govern it, the team's usage will become either chaotic or entirely secretive. Managers have to explore the territory first so they can lead their team through it confidently.
And as they lead them through it, they have to set up those guardrails we talked about earlier.
Those structural guardrails are non-negotiable. Leaders must establish crystal clear boundaries for data protection and institute mandatory review processes for all AI-generated outputs.
Those are the hard rules that keep the company out of the negative headline.
Exactly. But alongside those rules, managers also have to completely rethink how they measure success. You have to measure outcomes, not activity.
That is a massive paradigm shift because legacy management is obsessed with activity. We measure hours logged, emails sent, tasks cleared in the project management software. But if an AI can clear 100 tasks in 5 minutes, activity metrics become totally meaningless.
Precisely. If your dashboard says your team is using the AI to process tasks at record speed, but your client satisfaction scores are plummeting because the output is generic or flawed, you are confusing sheer motion with actual progress.
Right. Motion isn't progress.
The goal is improved overall performance, better ROI, faster project turnaround with fewer errors, not just generating high-usage statistics.
And doing all of this requires a level of communication that most companies frankly struggle with. I mean, people are naturally anxious about their livelihoods when they see a machine doing their tasks.
That anxiety is exactly why communication must be radically transparent. Leaders have to sit down and talk openly with their teams about how AI is going to affect specific roles, how career growth paths are evolving, and what the future of the company looks like.
Because if you hide from this conversation,
you breed paranoia and resentment. If you address it openly, you build psychological safety, trust, and deep engagement.
Synthesizing everything we've pulled from this material, I mean, what we are looking at is a generational leadership inflection point.
Generational, yes.
The transition from AI as a reactive sidecar tool to AI as an embedded proactive teammate is happening right now, whether we are ready for it or not.
Ready or not.
And the leaders and organizations who actively embrace this, the ones who take the time to meticulously redesign their workflows to blend digital scale with human judgment, they are going to build incredibly agile, effective teams.
They will dominate.
And the ones who refuse, they're going to be stuck managing individual software tools and activity metrics while their competitors are out there leading major market-shifting outcomes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the core message buried in this source material is surprisingly optimistic for human workers.
Optimistic?
Yes. Because yes, AI is going to take on a massive, almost incomprehensible chunk of daily mechanical execution. It's going to write the drafts, parse the data, and crunch the numbers. But true leadership, the human ability to provide context, build genuine trust, navigate complex business judgments, and carry the heavy weight of true accountability, that remains firmly, fundamentally human.
It does.
And that very human element is exactly where the real enduring competitive advantage is going to be built over the next decade.
It completely flips the script on what it means to be a valuable worker. Which leaves me with a final, slightly provocative thought I want you, the listener, to mull over on your own this week.
Oh, I'm ready.
If we are truly treating these AI systems as operational teammates, and if human value is shifting entirely toward judgment, oversight, and accountability, how long before a significant portion of a human manager's own performance review is based on how effectively they mentor, prompt, and, quote-unquote, coach their AI counterparts?
Wow.
Right. Will you soon be getting a corporate bonus because you managed to train your digital apprentice to a higher level of efficiency than the manager of the department next door?
That is a wild thought.
It really does make you wonder what the corporate org chart of 2030 is actually going to look like. So the next time you boot up your computer, ask yourself, is this software just waiting for me to pull the trigger, or is it ready to help me build the house? Today's show was human-inspired and powered with AI assistance. Be sure to visit us, www.botsandbosses.com. Remember, the bots are getting smarter, but you're still the boss.
Well, that's a wrap of this episode of the Bots and Bosses podcast. Enjoyed the show? Don't just listen. Follow the Bots and Bosses podcast and connect with John Binks online. Remember, the bots are getting smarter, but you're still the boss. For now, see you next time.